Hey everybody, I'm Aaron Simmons, and this is the bonus video for my November 2023 newsletter. If you are watching this in November, thank you so much for being a subscriber. And if you're watching it later, once it's made available to everyone else, then please go to my website, jaaronsimmons.com, and get subscribed so that you can get access to this cool content as soon as it is released. Let me also begin by just saying thank you to everyone that I saw this past week out on the road. I did a little book tour. It was wonderful to see so many subscribers to the newsletter, fans of the YouTube channel, people who think with me and encourage me to keep making this public philosophy available. There were so many of them out at the Theology Beer Camp, at different places that I would stop and give talks. And so let me just thank all of you. It really is an unbelievable encouragement to think with you in these sort of distant ways, and then to be able to actually see you in person and get to know you. So thanks so much for investing in me. I do hope that the content and the material I'm producing is an investment in you. Well, what I want to talk about in this video is the idea that we have to put in effort, put in work in order to strive toward the type of world that we hope to live into. Now, there's some existential realities that occasion these sorts of reflections. The first is a radical awareness of the contingency of the world that we inhabit. Now, Martin Heidegger says that we receive our world under the mode of obviousness. It's handed to us as just obviously the case, because this is in fact how we are able to navigate the challenges of figuring out who we are trying to become. If we started from scratch, right? If that radical contingency of the world were something that attended every instant of our lives, it would be nearly impossible to be able to go forward in living. It's kind of like if we spent a lot of time thinking about shifting every single gear from first to second to third. We've got these old manual transmissions. The only way you can drive those cars is if you aren't actively thinking about shifting all of the gears. It becomes kind of second nature. It's just something that you do. Your body knows how to shift gears, and it allows the car to keep moving. The same is true when it comes to our lives and the way that we navigate the world. If we receive the world as this radically contingent place, it sometimes can become overwhelming, because then every single decision can become stifling, right? We become deers in headlights looking at this entirely open future. What should I do? How do I go forward? In fact, a student of mine today, was sitting in class, and he raised his hand and said, look, I'm super compelled by the freedom that existentialism provides, but I admit I'm just unable to know how to make decisions when I realize that the freedom is real. When I recognize that I can impact the world, I can choose how to go forward differently, it makes me almost incapacitated. I don't know what to do. And this is an idea that we see developed by Jean-Paul Sartre, when Sartre says that he has the student come to him and says, what should I do? Should I go fight in the war? Should I stay and care for my family? And Sartre's response is, well, which future are you most comfortable living into? There is no guarantee, right? Whatever we choose, it might go bad. We should have chosen the other thing. But whatever happens, which will be the future, the self, the world that you are okay having willed to be real? That question is one that, even in light of the fact that the world's handed to us as obvious, this is again the discourse of the real world. This is where we tend to talk about some things as just the way things are. And again, that's helpful because it allows us to not have to, think about shifting gears every single minute. But it's also really important to realize that the freedom that attends our decision is not just freedom that impacts us alone. When we are free to make choices, we also navigate and narrate the world as a space of possibility. In many ways, we might even understand a broad existential approach to living as the affirmation that the world as such is best understood not as a collection of objects, but as a horizon of what is possible. The world is what could be the case, not just what is the case. Now, this might be a kind of weird thought, right? Because when we think about what could be the case, what we're actually saying is we now make sense of where we are in light of where it is that we take ourselves to be possibly heading. In this sense, we almost occur, as Heidegger would say, out of our future. It's when we are directed toward something that we now make sense of where we are. The trajectory, the projecting ourselves into some outcome that we want to see. This actually occasions the significance of the choices we make and the importance of then making good choices. Now, I get that this is all kind of abstract. Let's try to give it a little bit more practical bite, a little more concrete application. So I have had a lot of students recently who have just been absolutely overwhelmed. They've got too much to do. They're so busy. They're exhausted. And I completely get it. Having been on this book tour, having launched the book now these past 2 months, I am tired. I've not been sleeping a ton. The work is piling up. The papers still need graded. The essays for journals have to be revised, sent back in. And it's easy to think in light of just all that needs done that the best response is almost to be overwhelmed by that weight. But I want to suggest that the work it takes not to be overwhelmed actually helps us be more effective at the work we have to do. And so I tried to explain this to my students. I was like, look, we've got to think differently about our embodied comportment toward what is possible. We don't have to live our bodies weighted down by all the work. We can actually see the work as something that, yeah, we got to get this done, but maybe I can walk through the world in a way that reveals the possibles that attend where I am now. And of course, they looked at me like, this is ridiculous. This is why philosophers make no sense. How's this going to help me on my chemistry homework? And I said, look, guys, what if you found yourself overwhelmed? Do you tend to smile? And of course, they all scrunched up their faces and, well, no, it becomes hard to smile. It's hard to laugh. I'm just got to put my head down and, grit through it. And I said, well, but what if we did something that made it almost impossible not to smile? Where we betray our being overwhelmed and being exhausted by, the ends of our lips starting to crack up and starting to find ourselves in joy, even though the stress has not been eliminated. How about if we did that? Would that be cool? And of course, the class was all like, yeah, sure, whatever. That'd be fine, but that doesn't happen. We're exhausted. And I said, all right, everybody stand up. We all went into the hall. And I said, we're going to skip down the hall to the other end. And I challenge you, skip with me. And by the time we get to the other end, I'll nearly guarantee you that you're going to be smiling, you're going to be laughing, and you will simply feel better. They, of course, were skeptical. By this point, they were all chuckling about the idea of skipping down a hall. That's ridiculous. We're too old for this nonsense. And I said, come on. And so I started skipping. They all started skipping behind me. And we get to the end of the hall. And I asked them a question. How many of you couldn't help but find yourself in a position of joy while doing this? And the hands all start going up. In fact, I've got some video of this. Let me show it to you now. Watch this, and we'll come back and think about it. How many of you found yourself smiling, despite yourself? That's awesome, right? I'm so glad I had a friend of mine actually sat in the class that day and was able to video us as we skipped down the hall. What's really cool is we happened to pass several other students coming the other direction, and they also started smiling. They started laughing. And this occasion was something that allowed the students to understand the radical importance of our embodied comportment toward the world we wish we inhabited. Now, your chemistry homework doesn't get finished because you skip. The stress of the internship or the interview doesn't go away because you're laughing in the halls going to class. but the weight of the work that's required maybe gets repositioned. And that, I think, really makes all the difference. So nothing that I'm suggesting about this broadly existential approach to work as, in fact, something necessary. I'm not suggesting that this is an easy idea. I am suggesting, though, that our embodied relationship to the world as a horizon of possibility can be something that facilitates joy in the process. It's as if when we move forward, we dance a little, right? I don't know if you've ever seen the performance of Maya Angelou doing her poem Still I Rise, but I highly recommend that you take a look at it. It's amazing. I'll actually stick a link in the description to this video. In that video, she doesn't just read the poem, she performs it. Her body becomes, you might say, the pages upon which the words are expressed. They're written. And in many ways, our bodies become that kind of performance art relative to what we want to say about ourselves, about the world, about what's true, what's good, what's beautiful. And so when we think together about, like last month, we taught about the importance of rest, the importance of finding the sublime in the pedestrian. And this month we're thinking about, but once we do that, we've also got to get the work done. We've also got to be able to realize that things happen because we put in the investment, the intentionality, the purpose in order to make them occur. And that's also important. Existentialism is not about throwing our hands up and abandoning responsibility. It's about embracing the responsibility that then throws us ever more fully into the work at hand. But when that happens, again, we can so quickly fall back into that rat race, fall back into that success logic, the economic exchange that says, hey, you do this, you get this out of it, this makes you better. And what I'm suggesting is, no, we've got to rethink work from the ground up as this opportunity for being invested in a world that can be otherwise. It can be different. Change is possible. But change is possible only if we are willing to work toward a world that looks different than the one we currently find. Now, I don't know about you, but again, it can seem like skipping down the halls as a recommendation for social change and stress relief is almost trivial to the point of being offensive. I get it. But what I want to suggest is, look, find ways to locate those trim tabs on the enormous airplane that start to shift the direction in which it's flying. If it's skipping down the halls, if it's changing music on your playlist, if it's simply finding ways to say that I'm okay even when things aren't, that sense of deep peace does not mean that we are not paying attention. It means that we are not fully, exclusively defined by the circumstances in which we find ourselves. Those circumstances are not permanent. So as we do work, as we put in effort, as we think together, as we walk together, as we talk together, as we skip and dance along the way, may we, like Maya Angelou, remember that sometimes when we laugh at the scorn, when we skip in the face of the homework, we still get the homework done, but now we can do it with a different approach, a different attitude. Now, I realize that this is not, heavy lifting, really thinking through the finer points of existential philosophy. But sometimes I think we really do miss the point of existential philosophy by trying to make it so technical. At the end of the day, existential philosophy is a philosophy about how to exist a little bit better, a little bit more effectively, a little bit more aware. And when we do that, I think we've done an awful lot. So I hope this is helpful. I hope it encourages you to think about the ways in which we can relate to the world as a horizon of possibility. We can embrace the contingency of the world without having to make it so contingent that we are stifled in our decisions. And a reminder to think about our embodiment as a kind of performance of the possible. So may we skip together and dance along the way. I'll see you next month, unless the piano falls on our heads.